I'm Paul Limbrey. I oversee Google's global relationships with our largest agencies and partners, and I'm here today with Janet Balis from BCG and Brian Wieser from Madison Wall, one of the leading industry analysts, to help us unpack the research and make sense of the challenges and opportunities that the industry is facing today. Google and BCG have recently interviewed 1,000 people involved in the marketing industry across countries, about 10 countries, to understand the new era of marketing partnerships. Janet, to kick us off, what is the headline insight that our joint research together has revealed?
I think the big headline is that marketers are craving connectivity. They really want for everything to be viewed through a holistic lens. And when we think about paid, owned, earned, commerce, creative, and media, they are hoping that all of those things can come together because in a world of AI, they can and should be connected.
And Brian, when you look at the structural shifts happening from historical margins to how the holding companies are actually growing, what's your headline insight for how agencies need to financially adapt?
The biggest challenge is frankly just deciding to actually invest and having confidence in the business and that there are long-term opportunities. The only choice in my view, or Madison Wall's view, is invest or die, for lack of a better word.
One of the big takeaways from the research is just how budget pools are shifting. What does that signal for what clients are actually looking for, what services and capabilities they actually need?
Well, there's definitely 4 key signals that they were focused on in terms of where they're investing disproportionately in the future. So when you think about things like AI-driven creative, commerce, AI-driven discovery, and certainly the creator economy pop to the top of the list. But I think it's natural to assume that it's sort of a land grab against paid media, and that we're all just looking at pools of investment that come from paid advertising, and that's not the case. When you look at where it's being funded, it's places like RGM and commerce, it's things like product innovation, it's things like the owned and earned budgets. So if I'm sitting at an agency, I want to think more expansively, not that it's a land grab against my competitors, but actually that this is an expansionary view where there are new pools of value that I can go after as long as I think about my client holistically and really think about partnering with them on a strategic basis.
Brian, you've hypothesized that AI budgets are shifting away from agencies because they're flowing more to technology and other sort of SaaS, IT sort of budgets. How can agencies sort of restructure their offerings, or are they restructuring offerings to bridge the gap so they aren't bypassed by technology sellers?
Well, one thing I've observed is that agencies can grow when they invest in the right new offerings. Frequently, they're not doing that enough. And so all the opportunities certainly that you've outlined in your work are still there for agencies, but they have to invest against the bodies, they have to invest against competencies, sometimes acquisitions as well, to have the people fundamentally to be able to service these needs.
So that's worth taking a step back then. So how are commercial models sort of writ large changing to navigate the moment, and how are agencies actually monetizing the opportunity?
Well, one thing I've seen, and this is not an aspirational observation, it's purely what we see in the numbers. We still see fees driving everything for the vast majority of spend. We still see that marketers, independent of what they wish they had, they're deciding to pay for FTEs primarily. Now, there is growth in spending in media, in particular on principal-based trading or alternative trading models, where effectively the working media spend is funding the services. And that really does seem to be, for lack of a better word, a viable model to fund a lot of things. For all of its challenges, it absolutely is visible in the numbers, and it does seem to be a viable way to sell through additional services.
Janet, your research touches on this directly. The research says 2/3 of marketers are looking at outcome-based models. How do we think marketers are connecting the outcomes to actual business value?
Yeah, it was super interesting in the research when we talked to marketers. We saw that performance-based and outcome-based models were at the top of their list, with 66% of them saying that's how they wanted to compensate their agencies. Right behind that was hybrid models, and then behind that was more project-based approaches to commercial structures. So there is no question that marketers are really challenging the way they think about working with agencies. Now, standing in the way of all of this, I think if you think about an agency having that dialogue with a marketer, you've got margin pressure, you have a lot of risk aversion, and the fact is that we have to really build a new form of partnership so that the interests are aligned, and we're really focusing on client outcomes and a clear way to measure that, and you have a clear source of truth, which can be a challenge.
So it clearly starts to put some pressure though on like KPI identification to actually have a meaningful outcomes connection to business value conversation. Are there any early sort of indicators as to what the top 1 or 2 KPIs that are being used out there to try and broach these new commercial agreements?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's probably not one. I think you're also looking at hybrid models. That's why I think that came up as the second one in our research, is that you widen the aperture of the lens, so it won't just be marketing, it's probably growth writ large. So you might be looking at something like net sales. And so you're starting to take on risk of things that fall outside of marketing, and you're taking joint risk, both client and agency, for simply growth or value creation, and you're orienting yourself around something that's much larger than simply the direct return on investment on advertising spend, as an example.
So if we want to tap into pockets of expansionary growth, and we are starting to see that opportunity exists, but how do you flip the conversation from just being efficiency-based to value creation-based?
If we think about value creation, on the first side of the equation, there's no question efficiency is going to be the first place people look for value to be delivered. I think the key thing is to redefine the equation and not make it around automation of tasks. If we make it an automation question, we're not thinking about AI in its most elevated sense. And we have to elevate the conversation on the client side. It's not just the CMO, it's the CMO, it's the CEO, it's the CFO, the CIO, and really talking about how to connect the dots, not just around all the parts of marketing and commerce and the commercial growth engine, but also other parts of the equation, things like supply chain and R&D and other parts of the company where there are vital signals which, when connected to marketing, actually allow you to trade off decisions more intelligently and, again, create more growth. When you drive profitable growth, that is valuable to shareholders, and that's how you change the conversation.
There's a lot of efficiency, but the efficiency plays are in a single workflow. And in the research, you identified a desire to get beyond single workflows, and you coined the expression like that they're looking for intelligent orchestrators. Can you just expand on that concept a little bit?
If you think about it, they're working across a lot of different teams within their own organization. It might be the paid advertising team, it might be the own team, it might be people who are thinking about creators, it might be people who are running e-commerce. All those people are different teams, sometimes different technology stacks, and they are looking for people to holistically bring all of those different pieces together so that it drives value accretively. Technology won't do anything unless we direct it towards a goal. So it's incumbent on agencies to work with their clients to think about that whole ecosystem and purposely build a design for the business so that they help CMOs and all the rest of the C-suite around them to really work towards that objective.
At Google, we think we're bringing incredible technology and capability to bear to help address those challenges. You then need a smart set of people that understand how to connect the technology to the business problem. And it's really getting those three sort of groups working together in concert that then drives a great outcome for a marketer. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.